I'm one of the founders of a site called Kickstarter. It's a site that helps people make music and movies and restaurants and games or pretty much anything that you can imagine. Parents, maybe you've heard of Kickstarter from your son or daughter or niece or nephew doing a project. If you haven't yet, you probably will pretty soon. It's a new way for your kids to ask you for money, so you're welcome for that. Graduates, I just have to warn you, once your parents get onto Kickstarter to support you, pretty soon they'll be into 3D printers and weird art galleries in Duluth where everything is quilted and strange Burning Man projects, and then pretty soon they'll dust off their high school poetry and publish a volume using Kickstarter. We should all hope so. But as Lauren said, and I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, you're probably worried about what comes next, and there's a lot of great unknowns as you step out of here today, and those anxieties are real. But the one thing that I do know, and it's a kind of a surprising thing, but people are interested in helping other people make art. Even in this moment of economic calamity where we're all supposed to be saving our money for bread and gold and bullets, there's still 4 million people have pledged over $500 million to help other people make art during this time. This is an amazing thing. These are projects not from famous people. These are projects from our friends, from our neighbors, from our relatives, from people just like us. And collectively, together, we're all making these things. And so for those of you who are about to step out and you've taken this brave step of devoting your lives to being creative, to making things, this is really amazing. This is really exciting. But maybe we shouldn't be so surprised. Art has always been a part of civilization. It's always been a part of our culture. We're gifted with the ability to speak, and we have things that we want to say, and we want to say them a certain way. We want other people to hear them and understand them. And that's what art is. That's what it is to be an artist. At its core, that hasn't changed all that much. But obviously, a lot has changed. The internet's changed a lot. Geography is no longer a barrier. Distribution is no longer a barrier. Even language is much less of a barrier. You can have an idea, you can make it, you can put it online, and someone halfway around the world who you'll never meet can hear it. They can play with it. This is a crazy thing. It's hard for us to recognize it. It's hard to see the water that you swim in for what it is, but this is an unbelievable thing. But some parts of being a life of an artist haven't changed all that much. For one thing, artists still need money. You still need community. There's still a lot of things that have to be with you to create things. And we're sold this myth of the lone wolf artist, the person who sits in a castle all day examining like paint pigments and looking at camera lenses, and they just meditate. And then out of this comes this sacred practice of creating art. And it's hidden behind this wall, and it's very mysterious, and it's hard to relate to. But this is all a lie. This is not how it works. How it works is you create things with other people. You talk to your friends about your ideas. You see what other people think. And artists have always needed community. Artists have always needed money. You could argue that the very first Kickstarter project happened in 1715 when Alexander Pope decided he wanted to translate 16,000 lines of ancient Greek poetry into English. And he ended up doing this, and it was called the Iliad. You've probably heard of it. And to make the Iliad, he sought the support of 750 backers, people who would give him money so he could have the time to do this. And he promised them, quote, "The work shall be presented in 6 volumes on the finest paper, with ornaments and initial letters engraven on copper." So he's promising people what they would get in return. This is the Iliad. Just a couple decades later, Mozart needed to create 3 new concertos. He needed to fund them. And he says, quote, "They will be available at the beginning of April to those who have subscribed for them, beautifully copied and supervised by the composer himself." Mozart knew how to sell. His project was also successfully funded. Twain and Whitman and all sorts of artists throughout the centuries have made things in these similar ways, by appealing to their peers, by sharing an idea, and seeing what other people thought. So a lot of the ideas that we think are new are actually really old, and I think that we can take comfort in this. All of us are ultimately just trying to figure out our own path, figure out what our life is going to be. It's our individual quest, but it's a well-worn one that other people have done before. That doesn't make it any less special, but at least can bring comfort that the things that we face are things that other people have managed to survive. You'll get through these things. And the world works in unpredictable ways, especially if you're open to it. my own life has a few of those examples. The way I met my co-founders for Kickstarter, my partner Perry, he first had the idea for Kickstarter 12 years ago. He was living in New Orleans and wanted to put on a concert and didn't have the money to do it, and thought if only he could ask other people what they thought. And other people could pay, but they'd only be charged if everyone else agreed it was a good idea. And this would be a way that everyone could collectively decide what to do. But he was living in New Orleans as a recording engineer, as an artist, just kind of hanging out, riding his bike around the city. He didn't really know what to do with this. And about 4 years later, he moved back to New York, where he was from, and he and I met at a restaurant where he was a waiter and I was a regular. We got to be friends, and he eventually told me about this idea. We found another friend, a guy named Charles, and the three of us started working on this thing that became Kickstarter. But none of us had any experience in doing anything. Perry was an artist and a waiter. Charles was a graphic designer. I was a rock critic at the time. These are not people who start companies generally. And it took us 4 long years to do it. And it was, it was a slog. It was a slog. But, the things that Adam mentioned, perseverance, dedication, these are the things that got us there. And even how I got to New York. I grew up in Virginia, on a farm in Virginia, about a half hour from nowhere. And I went to college there in Virginia and graduated 13 years ago, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was hanging out in town afterwards. I was basically becoming a townie. And then my best friend from high school called me up and said, hey, me and 5 other guys just got a house in New York, in Coney Island. Would you like to move in with us? By the way, you need to be here in 48 hours. And it was one of those things where it was such a sudden thing, you didn't even have time to think it through. And I remember I called my mom, and she encouraged me to do it, which shocked me. I didn't have any job prospects. I didn't have any savings. I'd been in New York a couple times, but I didn't really know all that much. But I decided, all right, I'll do it. That day I went and rented a U-Haul, and 2 days later I was a New Yorker, completely terrified, but making what was ultimately the best decision of my life. The second month I was in New York, I got a job. It was rewriting news stories and little short blurbs like we read out on the radio. I got paid terribly. It was not what I thought being a writer would be. My dream was always to be a writer. But I learned a lot. I learned about deadlines. I learned how to recognize what's important. I learned how to work within this grander machine and finding a way to express myself through it. And it's honestly one of the best educations I ever got. And so I kept writing on the side, writing for myself and just sending things to websites and stuff like that. And finally, a piece I sent unsolicited to the Village Voice, they accepted it. They told me they'd pay $75 to me to run it, and they would print it. And it was amazing. It was one of the most amazing moments of my life. I was a rock critic. I had made it. Now, I realized that outing myself as a rock critic in this room could be a dicey thing. Musicians and the music industry of the future don't tend to like rock critics very much, and understandably so. You put years into honing your skills, and you express those things through a song that you might spend months writing, and then a critic might come along and tear it down in the matter of a few minutes. And the level of effort is uneven. You put so much of yourself into this thing, and I only have to put this much into it, and I totally get it. But I wanted to encourage you to brace critics. This week I was reading Harry Houdini's his memoir, and he had this great line. He says, when an artist, even a musician, is corrected by a critic, he should not be dismayed or look upon it as wasted. He should consider it a friendly favor. Imagine having a great big newspaper man watch the performance and then write a criticism free of charge. Why, it's a wonderfully beneficial thing. And as a person, as an artist, it's your job to learn and to grow. And the friction of criticism is one of the best ways to do that. It hones your ear. It lets you see what's good about what you do. If you're open to it, if you're open to criticism, you will get better. You also have to continue to hone your taste. One of the hardest things is distinguishing the differences between taste and talent. And coming from a school where you're being formally trained in music, I think you guys are obviously very talented, and it's easy to focus on that part of it. But ultimately, what's going to distinguish you is your taste, your perspective, what it is that you have to say, what it is that you think is important. Other people can read music and play things with the same level of proficiency, but your vision is distinctly yours. And that's something you really have to practice and focus on. There's a great example. There's this painter, Gerard Richter. He's an abstract painter, very, very famous, very prominent. And he's formally trained. He has amazing abilities. A lot of his paintings start with him painting something that's photorealistic, looks exactly like a photo. He spends days or weeks doing this. But that's just the first part of the painting. Once he has that down, then he goes in and he mutilates it. and he blurs it, and he stretches it, and he distorts it. And he turns this perfect photorealistic image into something that is barely recognizable. It's just the suggestion of an image. And so he has that technical skill, but he also has this point of view, this thing he's trying to express. It's those two things coming together. And if you can achieve that, then you'll find great, great success. So don't let your talent drown out your taste. It's what defines you. It's your perspective. Think about what it is you have to say and how it is that you want to say it. Think about it all the time. It's going to take a lifetime to learn that. And that process of getting to know yourself, of self-understanding, that's the whole deal. That's what life is. I can only offer encouragement that you do that because I'm still in the middle of doing that too. And I hope that I get to spend my whole life doing that, trying to learn who it is that I am. But that's the real work of life. The way I always imagine this in my head is I picture that inside of me there's this little bean. And this is my true self. This is who I was born as. These are the genes and the DNA, the pieces of my family, the flotsam and jetsam of the universe coming together, and that's who I am. And that little part of me it's vulnerable, it's fragile. There's no protective covering, it's just a little bean, it's just hanging out there. And that first time, maybe when you're 5 or 6 and the world disappoints you or you disappoint someone else, you get hurt, it really stings right there, right at your true self. And you respond by draping a little protective covering over it. It's a natural thing to do. It's the way you have to survive. And life keeps giving us opportunities to do that. There's a lot of them in adolescence. There's a lot of them through the relationships we have, the hard things that we face, the times the world disappoints us or we feel shame of something that we've done. And these things continue to build up and build up and build up. And the hard part is that eventually it's hard to recognize what parts of that are you and what parts of those are the calluses that you've responded to the world. And being able to be in touch with that little thing is hard, but it's worth all the energy. Knowing that part of you is the whole game. You have to know it and understand it, and you have to share it with others. Let other people see who you really are. You may get hurt as a result. You may make yourself more vulnerable, but the reward of being able to live your life openly and without fear are completely worth it. Take that chance. This is the place that your love comes from. It's the place that your art comes from. This is the place that defines who you are. Live your life with an open heart and full of curiosity and love, and you will know these things, and the world will present itself to you as the amazing adventure that it is, and you're going to be so good at it. Thanks so much for listening, and congratulations to all of you, the class of 2013.